Hello and welcome. I'm Eric Becker, editor of Words Without Borders, a New York-based journal of international literature. And I'm joined here today by poets and WWB contributors, Nathalie Handal and Enrique Villasis. Nathalie is joining us from Rome and Enrique from Quezon City in the Philippines. We're very pleased to be part of this year's Ronda Leiria Poetry Festival, and I'd like to thank Monica Royce for the kind invitation. And we'll just jump right in. Nathalie and Enrique, there's something, I thought we'd start out with a question that I think is about an issue that's sort of an issue, or a topic that's sort of, or theme that's common to your poetry, which is that of birds, of flight, or of movement, in a sense. And I wanted to, I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about, since that seems to be a theme that features so presently in your work, if you'd care to talk a little bit about that. Maybe we can start with you, Nathalie.
Yes, well, wonderful to be with you, Eric and Enrique. Thank you for having me. I was born traveling, and when you speak about flight, I think my residence has been the skies. I think birds have been a companion and probably, early on, a symbol of freedom. Though these days I ask myself, what is freedom? Is it the ability to move wherever or and whenever we want without restriction? Or is it about giving ourselves permission to create and imagine as we want? Or is the answer in all the love that we allow ourselves? I suspect it's a little bit of all of these things. But what I don't think I realized before was one thing, is that I was always thinking about the flight and never the landing. And these days I've been thinking, what does each landing symbolize?
And how about you, Enrique? Because it's also something, and I think even also in the poem you'll read today, birds and flight are also sort of a major theme.
Yes, but thank you for having me here, Eric, and thank you for everyone for watching this. Um, Birds in Flight 1965 and Birds in Paradise 1965 are both paintings by the Philippine national artist Vicente S. Manansala. So when I saw the paintings, one thing that captures me is the movement of the birds wanting to escape, and that's resonate to what I really trying to write. It's more about our want, our desire, and looking at the birds and looking at them, and they steer something that's very primeval for most of us. We see birds as a reflection of our desire to be free and our desire of movement, and this desire may be as a result from our the feeling of envy of something that we cannot even reach or even do. And I think it resonates to most of the artists, and I think from the painting of Manansala, it also resonated. That's why he he produced paintings of birds and call it as a series, a weird series, and that's what I'm working right now. And it's more of the how I recapture this uh, primeval feeling of desire, of wanting to be free, of wanting to move.
And so can you talk very quickly just about this series? So it's a series of poems that you've been that you've been working on. Sort of when did you start, and are you still in the midst of that, or have you completed it now?
I'm still working on it. Um, the idea was uh, to not just the weird series of the Sentiment Sala, but to do a ekphrastic collection of his paintings. So I'm almost halfway of it. I started the project 2013, and then I continuously working on it. Uh, I put it on hold and go back to it. The same way how we do our projects.
Sure, sure. So it sounds like a touchstone and sort of something that you, even as you're working on other work, you're sort of coming back to, which
Yes.
seems appropriate in a way for a theme that sort of um, uh, that tends to crop up and seems very, very important anyway to you. Nathalie, if we can come back to you for a second, I think there's there's a question of flight, there's a question of movement, of course. I think as regards sort of your personal history and appropriate to the fact that this is an international poetry festival, I wonder if you could speak a little bit. I mean, you've lived across the Arab world, Europe, Latin America, the US, and I think that movement, manifests in your work. And though of course poets tend to be by nature, I think, more internationally minded writers, they tend to perhaps than their prose counterparts. I think lived experience is something else altogether. And I wonder how this moving around or this movement, might have influenced your work more broadly.
Thank you, Eric, for this wonderful question. In relation to poetry, moving is translation for me. It's naturally moving linguistic and cultural landscapes, as if being like 5 people in 5 minutes feels actually possible. And then you realize that the translation is so flawless, you're just one integrated person, or text in this case. So living in so many places has influenced everything I write. It's song and soul, it's forms and energy, but most of all, it's heart. I think it's allowed me to be more open and expansive, to know that even after writing different books of poetry, many different books of poetry, I've just begun writing my first poem.
Well, before we jump sort of into the poetry itself, it's interesting that you both have sort of brought up this idea of movement, jumping back into it, or is it sort of being a natural, sort of a natural part of not only your sort of poetic practice, but of the way you sort of conceive of yourself and the world around you. I want to talk about a different sort of influence with you, Enrique, for a second, which I assume may or may not exist. But of course, you also work as a screenwriter. And I wonder if you could speak a bit about, what relationship, if any, you see between that medium and your poetry.
Yes, Eric. I've been working for ABS-CBN. It's the country's biggest TV network before the Philippine government shoot it down for some political and personal reasons from our president. But before that, as we work as writing for television, I write for soap operas. I write for teleseries. That's what we call it here. We need to consider first that the mainstream media here works differently from other countries. We have this, we call our programming as horizontal programming. So that means that we The shows air from Monday to Friday, for example, unlike from the US that you have your vertical programming. So anyway, uh, uh, writing writing for television, we tend to focus on the ratings or on our audience. We 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 look at the numbers of who are the people watching our shows. So we have uh, we work on the demographics, or what we call here as market segments. So they are divided, or they are categorized based on their sensibilities, not just their age, their upbringings, their social status, and their educational backgrounds. Uh, Unlike for poetry, we tend to write for ourselves, or for some people that we know that will be reading poetry or have interest in poetry. That's one of the difference of writing poetry and vis-a-vis for writing for television. Uh, there are times that poetry has find its way, or I've tried to find a way to incorporate it in our script. Mostly we use poetic images so that it looks like very cinematic, but the poetic language translating into a film language, as they say. And then there is this popular uh, poetic movement here in the Philippines. We call it hugot poetry, which is tend to be more love poems, that are love poems, spoken word, slam poetry that talks about the sweet and the bitterness of their taste of a relationship. That's the more popular poetry here in the Philippines. It tends to finds its audience in the mainstream market.
That's great. And I suppose you haven't yet composed a poem on the subject of one of the shows you write for.
Actually, I'm thinking of working on my third project, poetic project, and I'm thinking of not just the soap opera trope, but working on the Western film tropes. We used to have this uh, genre, we call it pancit Western, a rip-off of spaghetti Western, where Filipinos in cowboy hats pretending to be Marlboro Man. So that's one of my that's my third project, using the Western film tropes and incorporating it here in Filipino sensibility, Filipino macho sensibilities.
Sounds fascinating, and I can't wait. I hope Bernard will be translating that too. I'm interested to see how that works out. I thought we could jump in now to some readings, because I think that's what people are here for ultimately, in the end. And I wonder, Enrique, do you want to lead us off first with a reading? Are you're gonna read Birds in Flight or Birds of Paradise?
I'll be reading Birds in Paradise. I haven't read this in for a WWB event.
Brilliant. So do you want to start, maybe if we could be so fortunate, start with the original and then
Sure.
read the English translation, which is of course done by Bernard Capimpin, who's translated your work twice now for us, in fact.
Yes.
So yes, please take the stage, I guess, the virtual stage.
Birds of Paradise, 1965. Ganito ang pagkapaso sa mga hindi maipahayag na pagnanasa, banal at dilaw. Katulad nitong tanawin ng papalubog na araw na laging handang tumunaw sa ating paningin at dibdib, at may hatid na hapdi ang nagpapaalam na liwanag. Sa ilalim ng pilik, madalas natututo tayong manatiling nakapikit, hayaan ang bigat ng talukap, magpatangay sa pinipintig na hiling. ito ang simula ng bawat panalangin. Sa isip, ang kawan ng mga ibon, mga bagwis ng hindi matinag na likhang kulimlim. Tila may sinasagot, ano ba ang hubog ng Diyos? Nabubuhay tayo sa patanalig sapagkat nakamasid sa atin ang dilim. Halimbawa, ang dagim, ang dala nitong lamig. Kaya naghahanap tayo ng mga kilalang kamay o ang mga pamilyar na pagaspas. Sa dilim, ang paghigit sa pandama, ang paglagablab na nakalingkis na palad, ang kaluskos ng mga bumabangkang balahibo sa hangin padaong sa maalkitrang pag-iral ng grabidad. Sa pagkakadilat, ang nagaganap, umaahon ang kumpul liwayway ng mga umiindayog na pakpak, tinutudla ang mga estrangherong estrelya, bitbit ang maghapong init, nilulusaw ng silaw ang kanilang damit anino, tila mga kuwit sa putol-putol na pangungusap ng pagdatal ng mga tala. Maiiwan tayong nahihimbing sa alingaw-ngaw ng ilahas nilang pag-awit. Dagit-dagit ang lahat ng ating hinihiling. And this is the translated version, translated by Bernard Kapinpin. Birds of Paradise, 1965. Here is how one is seared by unspoken desire, holy and yellow, like the scene of a setting sun always ready to melt over our eyes and chest, and the departing light bringing with an ache beneath our lashes. We are often taught to have our eyes closed, to ignore the weight of our eyelids, to let loose in probing want. This is the beginning of every prayer. In the mind, a flock of birds, feathers from unshakable, shadowy thing, as if responding, what is the shape of God? We are sustained by faith because the dark eyes are upon us. Example, the nimbus, the cold it brings. So we search for known hands or some familiar flapping. In the dark, a heightened feeling, the burning of palms intertwined, the rustling of down hoist upon the wind toward the murky depths of gravity. From opening one's eyes, what happens? The dawn, a cluster of rhythmic wings rises, aiming for distant stars, carrying the afternoon heat. Brightness dissolve their number and shadow like a comma in a broken sentence of approaching stars. We will be left sleeping among the echoes of their wild singing, clutching our every wish. Birds in Flight, 1965.
Thank you so much, Enrique. That was terrific, and it was beautiful to have it both in the original and in Bernard's stunning translation. Nathalie, I think you're going to share with us too. Can you tell us what you're going to read? And I believe you're going to share 2 poems with us. Is that right?
I will. First of all, thank you, Enrique, for that beautiful. Yes, I will read the first poem from my latest collection, Life in a Country album, which is a reflection of what we spoke about, life on the road. And I will read a second poem that was in my collection, Poet in Andalusia, entitled The Traveler. So the first one, Orphic. As a child, I believed God was in the wind that carried us elsewhere, that departures were returns. I buried the sun in my father's ashtray to see him in eyes in Berlin or Stockholm, where the cold is another country, longing another landscape. And the past comes back. Close the door. Solitude will not leave. Close the window. Light will not escape. Close the wooden trunk. Memory will not vanish. Close your eyes. Home will not disappear. Close everything close. All will remain like Mostar and Jerusalem, like our Roman chants, Byzantium icons, Muslim prayers. The years passed. I looked for death in Palermo and found my mother's womb. Looked for life in Thessaloniki and found a song about death. Looked for my image in Venice and found all my images. Crossed Trieste with my heart and Naples without my hesitations. Memorized Marseille from Notre Dame de la Garde. Counted all my dream in Akka. Found my name in the Colosseum. Listened to the lemons fall for hours in Rome. Waited for my lover to tell me the sea can't break. And found a musician born in a small town that reminded me that music always takes us back to the cities we are made from. And the next poem is entitled The Traveler from Poet in Andalusia. And basically, as we were speaking about movement, for me, movement is creativity. It is exactly in the imprecision of travel that I found the precision of language. The Traveler, with a quote from Antonio Machado from There Is No Road. I read and quote, "Traveler, your footprints are the only road, nothing else. Traveler, there is no road, only a ship's wake on the sea." Antonio Machado, The Traveler. Beneath a nomad, another. That's the way to guide whispers. Making love lets us forget the music limping around our feet. Reminds us there is no precision in traveling. It unweaves the body, invents its lines and directions. There is no precision, except in knowing the sea holds our waist when we think we've gathered what the skies have hidden and what the road couldn't. Thank you.
It's amazing. Thank you so much, Nathalie, and thank you, Enrique, as well. We're really fortunate here to have both of you here with us today, and thank you to. I hope that those who will be listening to this, because alas, we're pre-recording, that you've enjoyed having these two remarkable poets with us today. If you like what you heard today, I might suggest you visit wordswithoutborders.org, where you can find writing from nearly 140 countries, translated into English from almost 130 languages. Among them, among the work there, of course, Enrique's and Nathalie's as well in several ways, including a 2015 issue she guest edited for us of writing from Palestine as well. So hope you've enjoyed. I know I certainly have, and I feel fortunate to have been here with both of you today. So long for now, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Enrique.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for Words Without Borders. Thank you, Nathalie.